Today in this video, we're going to be taking a step back from Brewmaster and we're going to look at some of the other tanks, and I'm going to go over some of my favorite things that are changing about the classes. Now, I'm not an expert in any of these classes or specs. I've played them before in the past at various different levels, ranging from like normal LFR raid clears to pushing high keys and mythic raiding. So I have experience playing most of the tanks, but I'm not necessarily a DH main or a DK main currently, but let's talk about some of my favorite things that are changing about the classes so far in alpha. We are going to start off on the DH, and one of the more notable changes is that they no longer can play Felscard. And so we are going to be playing with a new hero talent called Annihilator, and this is going to be shared with the new Devourer specialization. Now, I haven't played Devourer, not going to talk about that, but this tree is really cool. It brings in a lot of like the shadow side or the cosmic side of the class, and there's some cool things that are going on here, specifically the new ability called Voidfall. So what this is going to do is it's going to cause your Fracture to have a chance to give you a stack of Voidfall, and upon reaching 3 stacks, your next Soul Cleave is going to consume them, calling down Meteor Strikes. So this is kind of one of my favorite things that is being added about the class. It just rewards you for hitting your basic rotation, and it has a pretty cool animation alongside of it. So as we hit Fracture, you're going to notice that we're going to gain Void Stall stacks, building up to a Meteor Strike. Now what's also cool about this is that the tank specialization has this phase shift. Actually, I guess it's true for both, but it's going to make you take reduced damage, making you a little bit tankier as you build these stacks. So as we're hitting, we're going to be able to gain stacks. Now we're at 2, and now we are at 3 stacks. So we're going to get this nice little glow that has like this nice cool like little shadow skull. And then when we Soul Cleave, it's going to get consumed, and it's going to call down a Meteor Strike. So it's kind of a classic build and spend. So as we stack up, once we hit 3, our next 3 casts of Soul Cleave will then cause us to call down these cool little Meteor Strikes. So I think it's a pretty cool animation. I like this a lot. Nice big fell fire kind of energy. Something else that's coming back, or I guess maybe not coming back, but is being implemented again, is that when you enter combat for the first time, you can actually Infernal Strike to place a Sigil of Flame at the target's location. I think this is really cool. It's more thematic. It gives more of a little bit of a bolster to the Infernal Strike, which has normally been a mobility button in the past. So if we come up to this pack and we throw down a Sigil and then we leap in, it's going to call down Meteor Strikes and plant a Sigil at the feet, which I think is pretty tight. So pretty rad. And then of course, when we enter Metamorphosis, we are also going to call down some meteors after hitting Spirit Bomb, or at least we should be. Now the last change that I really like is that Spirit Bomb now has like a long cooldown, and you're kind of forced to play it, which is a good or bad thing depending on how you look at the class. So you technically have one more thing in your rotation, but with a 22-second cooldown, it's seeming like it's going to try to take priority over Soul Cleave when it's available. So you're going to kind of dump your resources with Soul Cleave unless Spirit Bomb is available, which then you'll hit Spirit Bomb. So I think VDH is actually looking really cool for this new expansion. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are currently still under construction. Making a 2-spec class into a 3-spec class, I'm sure has a lot of work to it. I haven't played around with a lot of the other talents, but I really like this Annihilator stuff so far. I think the animations look great, and I like the kind of playstyle cadence. So next, we have the Death Knight. This class is one of the few tanks that has access to their Apex talents. There is some criticism about what the Apex talent does, basically being a Dancing Rune Weapon bot, where it's feeling very like Shadowlands Season 3 and 4 with the tier set, which I don't think is a bad thing. But what I really like that's returning about the Death Knight is the Swarming Mist, or I guess Blood Mist is what it's now going to be called. So upon activating Dancing Rune Weapon, you are going to erupt in a swarm of blood mist, dealing damage and empowering the damage based on the runic power that you end up spending during the cooldown. So I think this adds a little bit of oomph to Dancing Rune Weapon. Dancing Rune Weapon, to me, up to this point, has always kind of been like a lackluster CD compared to something like Incarnation or Avatar or Avenging Wrath. Blood Decay is one of those tanks that never had a true hit this button and feel powerful for a bit. While Dancing Rune Weapon is objectively good, it just always felt... it never felt flashy. So now when we enter combat, let's drop a Death and Decay. We're going to then slime these mobs with a Blood Boil. But then when we activate Dancing Rune Weapon, we now have this crazy blood mist around us, which I think is pretty fucking sick. This is a slight homage to the Venthyr power that existed back in Shadowlands. Most DKs didn't play Venthyr. I had a Venthyr Death Knight, and I really liked this ability. It was a lot of fun, especially as like Frost getting extra runic power and stuff as it deals damage. Pretty cool. Now, one thing that made me a little sad is I was hoping this would activate more often whenever you happen to proc your Apex talent, which has a chance to summon Dancing Rune weapons. But overall, it's a still pretty cool ability on the 1.5 minute cooldown. So what I like about the current playstyle, what it's seeming to be like, especially if you're playing Sand Lane, is that your idea is just to hit your Death Strike, your Heart Strike, and your Blood Boil. And while you're in combat, you're going to end up spawning little Dancing Rune weapons, as you can see. So you feel like you always kind of have these active, allowing you to cleave for a lot of damage, which always feels really cool. And of course, Blood Death Boil is now actually echoing as well after it gets empowered from your Heart Strike. So the rotation feels very fluid. You hit your kind of spenders, you hit your fillers, and it's just fucking, it's sick. It's so good. The other change, which I don't know is controversial or not, I'm not in a Blood Death Knight community, I don't know how people feel about this, but something that I really like is they have reworked consumption to be an empowered spell. Now you might think, well, that's going to be clunky, having to cast as a tank. You're vulnerable to obviously getting hit. You're not actively hitting buttons, but I think consumption feels very, very cool with the new playstyle with having Dancing Rune weapons up actively. So basically, it has 3 empowered levels. It consumes 25% of your Blood Plague, and while you're empowering this damage, you take reduced damage during the channel and after the fact. And so it goes up 3 tiers. So each tier is 25% more damage on consuming your Blood Plague. So the general idea is that you're going to activate your Dancing Rune weapon. You're going to apply all of your plagues. You can do your CD, your like regular rotation to spend this. And then when your rotation fades, or I guess the Swarming Mist fades, you can then empower a giant hit of this consumption cast, and it's going to deal a ton of damage based on your plagues that you had active from your Dancing Rune weapon. And then this is going to happen periodically throughout combat because you're spawning Dancing Rune weapons this entire time. So Blood Death Knight truly feels like the embodiment of a blood god. I don't really know how else to say it. It feels so sick. I like this a lot. I think they're really cooking here. I think there's still some things that they need to implement. The kind of sad change that I've noticed almost immediately is that both Bone Storm and Tombstone don't seem to be in play. So Dancing Rune Weapon, instead of playing this like CDR minigame, they have essentially removed the cooldown reduction you're getting from your kits currently, as it currently stands on alpha, and you just have this really powerful 1.5 cooldown. The best part about this though, or I guess the redeeming factor, is that you're getting Dancing Rune Weapon procs through your Apex Talents Dance of Midnight. So this is sick. This is the favorite part about DK so far, is the Swarming Mist and the Dancing Rune Weapon spam, as well as the empowered spell. Next, we're going to talk about Paladin just for a little bit. Paladin's kind of in an awkward spot because they have removed Eye of Tyr, and they've removed a lot of the cooldown reduction from the class. So you're no longer going to be seeing significant reduction through spending holy power, which does make me sad, but there are a couple of cool things that I think they've added. So unfortunately, Lightsmith is still kind of under construction, so there's not much to explore here, but Templar has their new powers in, and one of those things is Divine Hammer. So whenever you activate Divine Toll, you actually are going to summon Divine Hammers that spin around you for a period of time. And it strikes all enemies and just doing uncapped damage. This ability is so sick. So if you are curious, when Templar used to be activated from Eye of Tyr, which was one of our defensive cooldowns, it's now going to actually be activated from Divine Toll, which is in your class tree. So what's nice about this is when you're in combat, you are just going to be an actual Diablo character for a little bit of time. So as we get into combat here, I'm going to make sure I drop a concentration. I'm going to pop wings. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop Divine Toll in just a second once I can maximize the holy power. And you're now going to see that I am just spinning with these hammers around me, throwing out blessed hammers. This animation is so cool. I'm getting additional uses of my Hammer of Light, which is spawning even more hammers, so they're constantly just spinning around me, dealing a ton of damage. This is probably the most fun animation Paladin has had. I mean, Paladin's had this kind of style of animation for a while now, but it feels so good when you're in your cooldowns, not only having wings active, but seeing all of these hammers kind of fly around you. It's very, very sick, very thematic. For some reason, I keep constantly taking damage whenever I'm in combat, and I don't know what's causing it, because when I look at the combat log, it doesn't say I'm taking damage from anything, but I keep losing health. One other kind of convenient change that they made is that when you do Word of Glory yourself now, you're going to get refunded the mana. So no longer do Paladins have to worry about conserving mana when they cast it on themselves, they just have to worry about casting it on other players. The last little cool change that they added is this new talent called Valiant Crusade. Now, this is super minor. There's nothing flashy about this, but while you're out of combat, you're actually going to be able to cast Divine Steed, which will then grant you Shield of the Righteous for its duration, plus 2 seconds after your horse fades. Now, with the Templar tree, you also have Unrelenting Charger, which increases the duration of your steed, and you have the ability to have 2 charges of it, basically, in your class tree. So what this means is there's no like more awkward, like, let me casually build up holy power before getting to this pack. I can now just steed up, have him or Shield of the Righteous, and then once I'm in combat, I still have it for now 9 seconds. And now we're going to just be able to maintain this. So there's no like awkward clunky, let me throw a couple blessed hammers like I'm channeling a lasso. It's just, you can just steed up, charge in, and get combat started right away without feeling like you have all this crazy setup from pole to pole. So these are some changes that I really like about Paladin. I'm excited to see where they take the class in the near future over the upcoming weeks in alpha, going into beta, and of course the new expansion. So I'm sure a lot of you didn't expect to see me on a bear anytime in the near future, but here we are. Bear has gotten a couple of good changes. I think they have pruned out some of the awkward talents in their tree. There's a lot to go over here that I don't want to nerd out too much about because I'm actually feeling pretty nostalgic being on the bear. Not gonna lie, after not maining it for years and years and years. They have reduced all of the Berserk awkward talents in the tree. I don't know if this is actually a thing on live, but basically Berserk is 1 talent, Incarnation is 1 talent, and they've gotten rid of things like Rage of the Sleeper, which is just like a kind of a sad, awkward minor cooldown. And they have added 2 abilities that I absolutely love. So first, we have Sundering Roar. So what this is gonna do is it's going to deal a little bit of physical damage. It's also going to reset the cooldown of your Thrash. So ideally you're going to Thrash, hit this, and then you'll be able to Thrash again. And what it does is it allows your stacks of Thrash to stack up 5 additional times. So when you're playing things like Flashing Claws, this allows it to stack up from 3 to 5, and now it's going from 5 to 10. And then once this debuff expires, it's going to consume the rest of the damage from the excess stacks, dealing burst damage afterwards. So this is a really cool ability, especially during or after Incarnation. The idea, though, is you definitely want to at least be at 5 before you hit this. So it will take some time to ramp up. Obviously, you can kind of pray that you're going to get some free Thrash procs outside of this, but it's going to basically stack up to 5. And now that we're at 5, what we can do is reset Thrash immediately. It's going to be dealing damage over its duration. And then as we go up, once it expires, it's going to do a burst of damage here. Pretty cool. I think it's going to be very fun to pair with Incarnation. It's a 1-minute cooldown. Incarnation is roughly 2 minutes with the cooldown reduction you get from it. So overall, it's going to be pretty fun to pair with that. Now, something else that you may have noticed, but I want to talk about here, is Waking Nightmare. This awakens memories of past conflicts, causing a dread shade to take form nearby. While it's active, this shade slowly travels towards your target, dealing AoE nature damage to enemies nearby and mirroring your Thrash casts. So what you'll notice is as I hit these mobs, you're going to see like a replica of what I look like now come out and just start dealing damage. Let's see if I can get it to proc here shortly. So here it is. You can see the shade here, and it's every time I cast Thrash, it's going to replicate in like a little AoE around it. And so this is pretty cool. It's giving you like a little bit additional burst damage. You can even kind of spread it out. When you're casting Thrash from range, it'll continue casting here. So you can see there's the bear, and as I Thrash, it's going to continue thrashing on these targets. So I think this is very cool, pretty thematic. I like it with the Druid of the Claw hero talents. But overall, these are probably my 2 favorite additions to the Guardian Druid quote-unquote rework going into Midnight. I think them printing down the abilities makes a lot of sense. My bars look very cluttered on this character because I didn't really clean them up. But you essentially have like a 3-button rotation and you swipe to fill, but it feels so rare when you actually hit swipe. So most of your rotation is just Mangle, which has 2 charges now, Thrash, which has a fairly short cooldown, and you just dump Rage into Raise or Maul, whatever you're using. And then, yeah, that's it. It feels so good, very clean. I like what they're doing with the class so far. So I've already talked about Monk a ton, but I do want to showcase it here for anyone who clicked on this video who might not be a Monk player and is curious. So basically what they're doing is they've reworked Monk actually quite a bit, and they're giving us the ability to play like a lot of fire-based abilities. So things like Celestial Flames are going to cause our kegs or our Rushing Jade Wind to erupt in fire damage instead. It's allowing our kegs to spawn whirling fire tornadoes dealing high AoE damage. So it's a lot of fun. One of my favorite things so far is actually this exploding keg ability. So when you throw exploding keg, it's going to cause your next two keg smashes to also spawn these fire tornadoes out of the character you're hitting, meaning that you're just doing a lot of cool, fun fire damage. Celestial Flame is also a fairly nice ability when you have a chance upon consuming brews to turn your Rushing Jade Wind, which is normally like this nice calming green feathery looking animation, into a absolute firestorm of a vortex around the Brewmaster. So these are probably my two favorite abilities going into the next patch. I think there's some really cool synergistic nature and fire builds, as well as a kind of more pure physical build with some of the Apex talents, along with obviously newly introduced hero talent points. So didn't want to spend too long on this, but I did want to showcase it. So last but not least, I'm going to talk about Warrior. There is nothing I really want to actually showcase here because there hasn't been a lot of changes. We saw a recent rework to the Protection Warrior tree going into 11.2. Most of it is staying the same. There are a couple of nodes that have moved around, but nothing that's like game changing, nothing that's really being newly implemented. The class tree definitely had a pretty big overhaul in where things are positioned. You're now being more or less forced to play through some of your CC nodes, which can be seen as a good or bad thing. You're also seeing a different setup in capstones. Now, one unique thing is that Bolster, or I guess Last Stand, has been made a passive in the class tree. What's interesting about this is Bolster in the spec tree still says it has a reduced cooldown and grants shield block. Now, the weird thing about this is that if it's a passive, how would it have a reduced cooldown unless it's the actual debuff? And I think the shield block effect is kind of null and void anyways, because you're not going to force yourself to drop to 20% health to proc a shield block. So there's definitely some wonky stuff going on currently with Warrior, so I probably won't talk about it until down the road. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that there is a new capstone called Battlefield Commander, which increases the effect of all of your shouts and howls. So Rallying Cry provides not only movement speed, but leech, 5% leech to everyone affected. Battle Shout's going to give you 3% more attack power, and then the cooldown and radius of certain abilities are being increased by either 100% 8 yards or having a reduced CD on your Intimidating Shout. Now, Intimidating Shout's still a 1.5 minute cooldown, so kind of long for Mythic Plus, but I think this is pretty sick, and you can see this here. If I open up my page, I have 7% leech currently, and if I rally, I'm now going to be at 12% leech for this duration. And you can see I kind of have increased movement speed as I waddle here in my Murloc onesie. So unfortunately, Warrior's kind of in a state where there isn't really anything new to talk about. The hero talents are still, while the icons look kind of updated, they don't have any text or anything to them. You can select them, but they don't do anything. As you can see here, it's just saying apply changes, which obviously isn't going to work. So anyways, that's the video. Those are the things I'm most excited for or to see that have been changed on the alpha. Obviously, a ton of updates are still going to come over the next coming weeks, going into later weeks in the alpha and into the beta cycle. So I will update you guys as I test these things. It's very fun. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions down below, anything you want me to test specifically, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.